What's up, everyone? Happy Monday. Steve and Perri here with a brand new edition of Collider Dailies. Steve, I feel like I should ask you how your weekend was, but I know it was awesome because it looks like your Werewolf by Night screening the other night went incredibly well.
It was last night, and by the way, the internet here is a little sketchy right now, so if I go out, that is the reason why.
If you go out there,
But the
stuck with me.
yeah, exactly. The screening went great, actually. We premiered Werewolf by Night in color last night. I can't call it a premiere; it's a special screening. But essentially, it was the first time anyone outside of the studio had seen it, and it's fantastic. It looks really cool in color. You can see the blood rather than it just being black or gray. I totally recommend watching it. In terms of, if you've seen it already, it's a new version of it. It's in color. Nothing's changed, but it's really cool. Theater was packed. Giacchino was great. I recorded the Q&A, so we're gonna do an article, but we don't. I do have some video actually. But anyway, if you missed it, and we gave away these cool Werewolf by Night in color posters. Anyway, it was a lot of fun. Everyone loved it.
I love hearing that. It does not surprise me to hear that that went well. I'll just do a quick shout out to anyone who came to the Adult Swim panel at New York Comic Con or maybe the Paley Fest event for Invincible Season 2. It was lovely seeing so many people there, and it was such a pleasure to get to moderate those. All right. First topic of the day. It's a Monday, so it must be weekend box office. Here's the top five for you. Taylor Swift: The Eras Tour made 96 million opening weekend. The Exorcist Believer came in at number 2 with 11 million. Then it's Paw Patrol: The Mighty Movie with 7 million. At number 4, it was Saw 10 with 5.7 million. And then rounding out the top 5 is The Creator with 4.3 million. Steve, the first thing we got to talk about here is the Eras Tour. I think both of us went a little high on it, but 96 million is still a rock solid start, especially when you remind yourself that there's nothing traditional about how this movie was released. I think we first found out about it, I think it's something like six weeks ago. And then on top of that, the only promotion they really did for it was via Taylor Swift, and she's got an insane amount of followers, so that is a lot of promotion. But look at how big this opening weekend is without the traditional movie marketing machine that we're used to.
Yeah, the things you need to realize is don't listen to me for box office numbers. It's pretty clear that I'm good at a lot of things, but not that.
Steve, to be kind to you with that, though, everything about this movie is an anomaly. It's really impossible to track something that has no precedent set for it.
Sure. So the thing is, it made an insane amount of money. They barely spent money marketing, as you said. And the fact of the matter is, I also don't know where it's going to end up. Like, I don't know if it's going to be one of these things that tops out at 200 million worldwide, or does it go to 400 million? Like, I have no idea, and I don't think anyone does. But look, I'm super happy for her fans getting to see it. I saw so many videos on, social with people dancing in the theater. Look, I mean, I'm surprised that at how well it did, and anyone who's saying it was not a huge success doesn't know what they're talking about.
Is wrong. It is a huge success. So not only is it now the highest grossing concert film at the domestic box office in history, like it, as in after one weekend, it's already surpassed the Justin Bieber concert movie for that movie's entire run. But then on top of that, I think there's still a chance that it could wind up being the highest October opening of all time. It's very, very close to Joker, which made 96 million. So I think we're just waiting for the actuals to come in, and that will determine whether it's one or two on that particular list. All right, the next thing we really need to talk about here is The Exorcist. So The Exorcist made another 11 million. And, as we talked about a couple of weeks ago, the issue with this one is how much money Universal spent to acquire the rights. And we didn't get to talk about this particular report since we last discussed Exorcist box office. So I thought it'd be a good thing to bring up right now. So the Hollywood Reporter has an article out there that is addressing the future of the franchise, the future of the series that Universal is planning to make. And what they say is that they're being told.
I want to point out it's exactly what we said was going to happen.
Oh, yeah, no, of course. Yep. Universal remains firmly possessed by its new IP. Two more Exorcist films will still be made, but sources say Believers' reception will almost certainly demand some degree of creative rethink for the next two films. So it goes on to say, we knew this already, that the next movie was going to be called Deceiver and that it would be released in 2025. There's some interesting information about David Gordon Green's involvement here, though. So he was expected to return, but he recently expressed some doubt about his participation. And this comes from an interview that was conducted on October 6th. David Gordon Green said, "My intention is to just start making things. And as those plans come together, if I find myself in the Exorcist Deceiver director's chair, I'll be thrilled. But right now, I'm navigating it from a story perspective and looking at my realities of life as I pivot." So.
Can I actually just jump in and say, I interviewed David with Jason before the film came out, and I asked him about the next two films, and he was non-committal. And like, to be honest, if I was David, I would go do something else. Like, he's made 3 Halloween movies. He's made The Exorcist. A lot of people did not like this movie. So it's like, why do another? Like, he has the choice to go do so many other IP or films or original stories or stuff on television, like on HBO. Like, he has so many options. Why put yourself through it again? And also, I want to see him do other things.
Yeah, that too, and I think this is a little bit of a messy situation. So he's got the opportunity to exit, and I feel like he should take it. I also think that if they're going to do a creative pivot for the next two movies, it would benefit the next two movies to have a different director at the helm, whether it's someone directing a two-parter or someone directing one and then another person directing the other. And names that came to mind. You know who I think should direct an Exorcist movie?
Scott Derrickson.
I mean, I'm always down for Scott to direct a horror movie, but I was thinking the Filippo brothers, the directors of Talk to Me. I mean, I think of that because there are some similarities in terms of the possession element, and I think they do that quite well in Talk to Me, but admittedly, at the same time, I'm like, go forth and do different things. Don't let me box you into just possession movies.
Yeah, the other thing I think people should realize is The Exorcist globally, as of last night, crossed 85 million globally. And I think a lot of people don't realize it's actually gonna break 100 unless something really weird goes wrong. And you don't really know where it's gonna finally end up. But it's not a bomb, but it also didn't make the money it needs to make when you spend that much to acquire the rights. Mm-hmm. So it's it's a single or a double, but it's not the home run that I think the studio needed.
Well, one other thing that's probably worth pointing out in that respect, and this is something that THR mentioned in their article, is that when they bought the theatrical rights, that $400 million was also for the streaming rights on Peacock and then also theme park extensions. So it's not just about, taking that $400 million, dividing it by 3 movies and then saying this is what you need to be profitable. There are other elements in play here. So it's not really a one for one in that sense.
I think, but that's another thing that so many people just don't factor in. Like, there's so many ancillary places that studios make money. And the other thing that people forget is they're going to own the rights to this movie forever, like for 100 years. So 10 years from now, they will still make money on this movie in some way, shape, or form. So it's just how long before something becomes profitable. That's the only thing.
Missed opportunity to say forever, just like The Sandlot, Steve.
Sure.
Forever. All right, next topic now. And part of the reason why I brought up Talk to Me is because the next topic is all about A24. And this whole report is an exclusive to The Wrap. Admittedly, I had to pick up some of the quotes from an outlet called Fader because it was behind a paywall, but it's a very, very interesting story. And if you're an A24 fan, you're going to want to be aware of the potential pivot that's on the horizon. So apparently, A24 is expanding its strategy to include more commercially viable films. So according to a top agent with knowledge of the company, A24 one of their acquisition executives made the talent agency rounds this summer looking for action and big IP projects, which, again, if you're an A24 fan, you know doesn't really fit the auteur-driven films we're used to getting from them. So apparently, the agent said that this is part of a larger strategy of de-emphasizing the traditional character/auteur-driven dramas that have been, beloved by this particular studio ever since it was founded in 2012. This is making me sad. It's making me
So
quite sad.
I have a lot to say on this. First of all, it's because things that people need to realize. A24 got a valuation of, and
Hmm.
I could be wrong about this number, but I believe it was like $2 billion, or it was a
It might
very
have even
large,
been 2.5. I
yeah,
don't know why I
it
want to
was
say 2.5.
it was a lot of money, and someone gave them, I think, like $250 million for a 10% stake or something along those lines. And with that valuation, they need to start making more money. So I personally do not see A24 ditching what A24 does. What I see, and I think that anyone who thinks that A24 is just going to pivot into becoming another Warner Brothers is out of their minds. What's going to happen is that they're going to do what they do, but also mix in big IP, big budget type films into what they currently do. Now, the question becomes, if it was easy to make a $150 million movie and make a ton of money on it, every studio would be doing it every weekend. And so the question becomes, how can A24 put their unique spin on what they make and what audiences respond to on a bigger budget type of property? And I think what people need to realize is what will most likely happen is they will start experimenting with 60 to 120 million dollar movies, bigger films that have more risk but have a more of a return on investment. And then it comes down to, can A24 partner with a Warner Brothers, or can A24 partner with a Universal? So the way a lot of studios mitigate their risk is by, like, Warner Brothers used to partner with Village Roadshow, or the way Legendary partners with different studios. What you're doing is you're putting in half the money, or you're putting in whatever the percentage is, and then you're working with other people, so there's a shared risk. So I don't think people need to think A24 is doing a wholesale change as much as they're introducing new elements into their business model.
I think that is a fair assessment to a point, but I still, and this might be a premature assessment on my part, but I still do have great fear with pivoting in this sense or broadening the type of movies they make, um, diluting what we know of them thus far. And I know a lot of this has to do with that ginormous appraisal and needing to make do on that amount. But I think part of the reason why this makes me so sad is, from our perspective at least, A24 is so damn successful. They make these smaller budgeted movies that do occasionally pop at the box office. They crushed at the Oscars last year. They just have built such a great name and image for themselves. But in this industry, that's still not enough. They still have to do more, and what more equates to are, big IP action movies. I mean, let's not forget that just the other week we were talking about that reported bidding war for the Halloween TV rights, and apparently A24 was in the mix for that. So I feel like my head is not going to be in a confident place until, let's say, I see A24 get their hands on something like a Halloween, or something like a four quadrant action movie, you name it, and I see them do it well, and I see them do it where it still feels like an A24 movie. That's going to be an extremely tough balance to strike, but once they do that, I'll have a little more faith in them doing both.
You see, that's the thing, is that for some reason, they are so good at what they do that I have complete faith that when they eventually transition into doing a bigger budget thing, whether it be on TV, whether it be in the movies, that they are going to bring the A24 energy to that project. I'm always like the optimistic person, unless it's the Halloween TV series. But I firmly believe that A24 is not going to make something that's $150 million or $100 million unless they really believe in it. But the bigger issue is that the box office has radically changed in such a dramatic way that things that you think are going to do really well are not performing, and there are surprises. So it really comes down to, even if you have a really good movie, doesn't mean it's going to make a ton of money. So
Hmm.
there's that's why you have to mitigate risk. And anyway, look, I believe in A24, and I think they're going to they will only do this if they have something worth doing. That's what I
I
believe.
I like that, Faith. Just to wrap this section up with a couple more points from the Wrap article. One thing that they did point out was apparently the studio has lost serious money on many of its recent gambles, and the specific titles they name are Waves, which is unfortunate. I love that movie. The Green Knight, and Beau is Afraid. And then the article goes on to say the bottom line is that auteur films don't make any money and are super risky. It's just not a good long term strategy. They have to have a good balance of both. And then another source close to A24 argued with this agent's characterization of the company's expansion in a statement to the Wrap. So there's still clearly like gray in terms of how this is all going to pan out for A24. And this is it's a report from the Wrap. So hopefully we'll get some more concrete information on the status of the studio and what they have planned for the future down the line.
I'm
All
also
right.
gonna one thing. I'm gonna point out how tough it is for artistic filmmaker driven films that even Netflix, I've heard, is basically not like making films like Roma anymore, or these smaller films that are more personal to good directors or great directors. It's just very, very tough because it's hard to get people to tune in and watch when a lot of people just want to use this, like, they want escapist fare on a Saturday night, and it's just the way it is. Like, I love all movies, but I'm saying it's hard to get people to tune in to smaller films. It's just hard.
Yeah, I shouldn't have made a face. I like Escapist Fare as well. It's just it breaks my heart to see such a special studio be in a position where they need to embrace other types of films when I thought what they were doing in this particular department was so impressive and I loved it. All right, our final topic of the day is a double Matthew Vaughn topic. We are covering updates from our own Maggie's interview with him from I was about to say San Diego Comic-Con, that's summer, New York Comic-Con 2023. These updates are on the Kingsman sequel and the Kick-Ass reboot. So first, for the Kingsman sequel, so what Matthew told Maggie was apparently they had different plans for the actual prequel movie that we got before before he was persuaded to turn it into a movie. So the quote from Matthew Vaughn is, "The Kingsman was originally meant to be a TV series, and I got persuaded to make it as a film. What we wanted to do was something like The Crown, but with espionage and a bit of a Kingsman hit going through all of the decades." Any hot take on Kingsman potentially having been a TV series, Steve?
He's talked about. I've interviewed him a few times. He's talked about wanting to do TV. Listen, I'm a huge Matthew Vaughn fan. I'm just a fan of his work. I would have watched the show, but since it doesn't exist, I really like that Kingsman movie, and he does action in just really cool ways. So yeah, I mean, I would have watched, but who knows?
Yes. Then their conversation went on to cover the actual film's post-credit scene, which features the introduction of David Cross as Hitler. The quote for that particular part of the story is, "The next one, it's about the rise of Hitler and how Hitler did come to power and basically was supported by the English aristocracy." Vaughn then went on to tell Maggie about the movie's plot. He revealed that, the status of the movie, I'm sorry. They revealed that it's been written and it's pretty cool. And he goes on to note that the time period is eerily familiar to current events, saying, so I was like, well, that's interesting, and how the world was worrying so much about communism and that fascism rose up. And I look at the world at the moment, everyone's getting distracted and worrying about this and that. And if you worry too much about this, bad things can happen. So it is a story that I think needs to be recalled. We're calling it the Traitor King. So that is the status of that. I'll be completely honest, Steve. I don't need this in my movies right now. I'm not super interested.
It's a little real world esque. I think. Listen, I would watch this movie instantly, but I do think that a lot of fans want the next one with Taron Egerton, and to wrap up that section. And also, look, Matthew has Argyle that's coming out soon, and he's involved in a ton of other things.
Hmm.
So the question is always with Matthew is what does he want to do? Because Matthew can basically make whatever he wants. So it's a question of does he want to do a Kingsman movie next, or does he want to do an Argyle sequel, or does he want to do something else? So he gets to pick what he wants to do.
Yeah, he gets to pick the format too, because the last bit in that article is Vaughn isn't sure if this particular project will come to life as a TV series or another movie, and he told Maggie they're currently debating the format along with figuring out which projects to prioritize following the end of the WGA strike. So, dude's gonna do what dude's gonna wants to do, and I don't know, good on him if he has the ability.
He does, and also he makes his movies at a lower budget than what the studios do. I believe, and I could be wrong, but I believe Matthew's company sort of pays for the movie, and then the studio sort of reimburses. So basically, he manages to bring in his costs at a lower number, and it's one of the reasons he can do what he wants to do.
Yep. And yet another project that is on the table for him, a kick-ass reboot. Here's the quotes that Matthew gave Maggie on that. This reboot is on a level that is like, I'll probably get sued. It's like nothing we've seen. We thought about Kick-Ass. We're asking, do we bring back the characters for Kick-Ass 3? And maybe one day we'll do a Kick-Ass 3 with the characters, but that world needs to be reignited. So it can't be Kick-Ass as without it kicking ass and making people go, what was that about? So yeah. And then he went on to say that he's writing something so effing crazy that he might actually face literal litigation over it.
That sounds like Matthew. And I think what happened with Kick-Ass is that he gets the rights back, or they get the rights back, or they've just gotten the rights back. What's interesting though is when Kick-Ass came out, it was a different world than the superhero genre is right now. Between what Marvel and DC are doing, Deadpool, The Boys on Prime Video, it's a different place. So you have to wonder what is he going to do with Kick-Ass that is so different than what's currently out there right now. Like where can you push boundaries? Because I don't know if you've seen Gen V or The Boys, but it does some pretty crazy stuff. So it'll be interesting. But look, if anyone can do it, it's Matthew. He has a sick sense of humor, and he's a very talented writer, and I'm a big fan.
Yeah, Gen V, The Boys, and also Invincible, even in the animation format. They go big in that respect.
That's another thing. Invincible, fantastic.
So good, so good. Final quote for this. Vaughn noted that an official announcement on this particular project wouldn't follow until 2024 after his next unnamed project, which apparently begins production next week, which that's exciting. And then the last bit here is, so we've written something that is so effing crazy that I'm really excited about it, and it will be probably announced in about 6 months to a year because I want to get it cast properly. The guys we're making it with, we're doing a movie due for release next year that's starting in about a week, which I've been told not to talk about. Kick-Ass is very important to me on a personal level.
Yeah, like I said, Matthew can do whatever the hell he wants. There's always people that want to work with him. It's just a question of what does he choose to make.
Yep. I like Kick-Ass. I want more Kick-Ass. I hope he announces that fairly soon so I have something concrete to get excited about. But that's where we stand on those two projects right now. Steve, anything you want to say to our live viewers before we close out this episode of Collider Dailies?
I have an interview that I have to be at in 5 minutes, so I will be brief today and say that I hope everyone had a great weekend. And reminder, we have a ton of upcoming screenings that are free and paid, and I hope that people can go if you live in LA.
Yep, and I will just emphasize that by saying you should go to the Landmark Theater's website to buy tickets for Scary Perry's horror series, or maybe you're going to get lucky and you should keep an eye out on the Collider website because there might be an opportunity to win a couple tickets there. Maybe, I don't know. You should probably look at the website. All right, that's it for this Monday's edition of Collider Dailies. Stay tuned. We'll be back bright and early tomorrow with a brand new episode.